Hi there, it's Hula Noob, and I played the medium. I finished it yesterday, and I want to talk a little bit about the things I really liked about this game and the things that were, well, so-so. So the medium is a psychological horror game developed by Bloober Team, who you probably know from stuff like Layers of Fear and Blair Witch, and the game was released in January 2021, which is this year in my timeline, and it is basically the story about well, you guessed it, a medium who has to use her supernatural talents to find out more about her past and some other bigger, maybe conspirational secrets. Well, it's a mystery, and it's spooky, and it's something else. So let's start with the good things. One of the things I really loved about the game was the pacing and the intrigue. Now, this game in no way felt elongated or stuffed, and at any point I was excited to see what will happen next. And this is actually something that not many games can do, especially when they're on the longer side, and weirdly, especially when they're story based. I've played a few games last year where I felt that one or two chapters could have been squished a little bit more, could have been even left out, and the medium had a great pace. It was always exciting, and it had a way of, adding just enough so you wanted to see what will happen next, which actually made me want to return to the game over and over again, because I didn't play this in one sitting. As you could see in my Let's Plays, I played this usually in 1 hour increments, and I always wanted to return. I always wanted to know what will happen next.
Ever since I was little, I've had this dream.
So the second thing that I think the medium did very well, and this I noticed later on in the game, was variety when it came to enemy encounters and puzzles and gameplay in general. Now, the controls are a bit clunky, I gotta say, at least they were for me. But what I realized with certain enemy encounters, especially, the third or fourth, that Bloober Team always tried to do something new and try to add some element that you hadn't done before. So there was not much repetition when it came to puzzles or, enemy encounters or anything else that involved a bit of a heavier gameplay. Of course, there were certain things you did quite a few times, but neither overstayed its welcome. And I think especially for a smaller game, this is a really smart thing to do, because a lot of the bigger games actually do that a lot. They like to repeat certain gameplay things and structures and, ways to fight monsters and whatever. So I really appreciated it, and it made for, again, a fun and exciting experience while playing through. And I think it added to the fact that it wasn't tiring to play the medium.
He's the last photo I took of you, Jack.
Now, the third thing I really loved about this game was the atmosphere. I think the first half of the game was a lot more successful on that account, but I think it still held through till the end. Now, the game plays in Poland, and at the beginning you see some beautiful Polish architecture. Even the Niva building itself is a sight to behold, and everything felt really moody and a little bit creepy and a little bit isolated and very, very beautiful. Additionally, the sound design, I think, was quite successful. It wasn't over-bordering, and you had some very nice details with background noises and voices and things that a lot of games, especially in the horror genre, try to overdo, which is like loud noises for jump scares. I think Bloober Team really held back on that and was more working on creating atmosphere through more subtle ways. Especially with the sound design for one of the main villains or main enemies, they did a fabulous job. So kudos for that. Now, what didn't I like as much with the medium? Well, First of all, Marianne. You know, I think Bloober Team didn't do worse than most other games, but it's still a little bit disappointing whenever the protagonist in any game is kind of the generic protagonist, and that's basically what Marianne was. She was like the leather jacket wearing, a little bit snarky, but all around quite laid back and normal character. There was not really anything about her that made her stand out amongst all the other protagonists.
Anyone home? I guess not.
Yeah, that's the kind of funny protagonist we're dealing with. Sure, games that work with actors in mocap usually have an advantage because they can try out things more, and they usually have a lot bigger budget for trying out characters and certain scenes. But I still think good writing can help also with interesting characters. And that even comes down to not just writing, but also the face molds, because Marianne looked also very generic. Sometimes I wish that game makers would deviate a bit more from attractive male or female characters and try to put more individual faces on them. You know, they don't have to be pretty. They don't even have to be very likable. They just have to be engaging. I want a character where I feel like I haven't seen that character before, but also a character that is kind of believable. So on that account, the medium wasn't really it. So we already know it's her motorcycle, right? Because she wears the leather jacket. She looks like, you know, every female character ever in a game like this. They never look different. Like, I just once want to have a female character with like superpowers or whatever who wears a frilly pink dress or like a floofy, you know, yellow sweater. Just once. Another thing that struck me, especially later on in the game, were the information dumps. The medium has cutscenes that are very long and contain a lot of plot information. You actually get quite a few plot details throughout the game through letters and memories and other things, but those very often are more like side informations and side stories. And a lot of the bigger plot beats you get in those cutscenes. And this feels sometimes a bit overwhelming, but it also takes from the mystery, because one of the greatest things about a good mystery is that you as the reader or the viewer or the player can figure out the mystery along the road and don't, you know, get it like thrown into your lap in one big overwhelming package. Especially with the length of the cutscenes, Bloober Team could have, you know, put a little less of that in those cutscenes and put a little bit more information in the letters we find and in the memories we see and all the other things we encounter on the way, so we can, you know, build the story bit by bit and not get, you know, those gigantic twists slapped into our faces towards the end of any given chapter.
Tell me, what happened?
I remember. People stopped coming. Only a few of them stayed. But they became very sad. Very angry. They might hurt you.
Thanks. But I can take care of myself.
The third thing that unfortunately didn't really delight me with the medium was the ending. But also the ending of a few of those chapters. And it's kind of tragic because the ending of a game is a little bit like the dessert of a menu. That's the one last impression you leave with. And as I said, it wasn't just the final ending, but also certain endings to chapters of the game where I felt that the expectation that I had for this and for the solution was not really met. I feel like a lot of the endings were taken out of the player's hand and they had just to watch what will happen. And I think it always feels more accomplished if you are actually an active part in a game's ending. And I feel like with the medium, many chapter endings as well as the final game ending felt like you were just suddenly on the back seat and watching, and you could not do or influence anything. And that was a bit of a shame. That was it? Okay. That was, I don't know. That was weirdly anticlimactic. So what did I think of the medium all in all? Well, I enjoyed it. I really did. For all its flaws, and I think it had quite a few flaws, I really had a lot of fun playing this. And as I understood it, it is a game that could have a sequel, and I think would work very well with a sequel, because there's quite a few plot points that are kind of left in the open, maybe deliberately, maybe accidentally. And I would love to find out more about the story, about Marianne's fate, about the fate of some of the other characters, as well as the world that Bloober Team built. And I think they actually built a world that was interesting and intriguing enough to find out more. So I would recommend this game, and I really don't regret getting this and playing this, because I had fun, I was entertained throughout, I was critical throughout, but that's okay. I just wish if Bloober Team actually wants to continue this saga and do another game, or do a completely different game, that they will look at what didn't really work with this one and try to embellish it. Because I actually do see that this is much more ambitious than, for example, Blair Witch or Layers of Fear, and I feel like this ambition should be rewarded by the fans of the developers and by fans of horror games in general. So I would support them, and I would totally get the sequel of the medium, maybe the mediums, or any other game that Bloober Team comes up with. So what did you think of the game? Did you like it? Did you like the ending? What did you like? What didn't you like about the game? Do you agree with my review, or do you completely disagree and want to tear me to shreds in the comments? Well, do so. I mean, you know, don't get personal or anything, but I'm up for an adult, dignified discussions anytime. If you like this review, well, like this review. And you can also subscribe to my channel, because that would be kind of a fun thing to do. I do a lot of horror games, I do the occasional game review, and sometimes I do little silly videos, because who doesn't like a bit of fun now and then? Hope you have a wonderful day, and maybe see you soon. Bye bye bye.
Marianne,
Yes.
would you play with me? Just for a little while.
This is my self-recorded outro song, so I don't get hit with copyright claims. If you subscribe to a lot of fun tutorials, reviews, and let's plays.